Okay. So my computer just died, so sorry about that. It is time to start. We're already behind time to start. And when Kimberly's coming back, and I will pay attention to her computer when we get restarted. So Andy and Chicky, I can see if you have questions. And Andrew, are you starting right off?
Yeah, we're ready to get going.
So.
Alrighty, let's jump to the slide. And so, sort of in discussions with a couple of folks just now during our break, we're going to change the format a little bit with this session. Instead of breaking into 3 groups, we're going to do it all together. And so this is the final portion of our retreat journey that we've been on. We've got until 2 o'clock, so I think we should be good from a timing perspective, especially with our new format. I think we'll save a little bit of time there.
Sorry.
Audio working okay? Oh, you're talking about charging. Okay, sorry. And so this portion really is to brainstorm and then prioritize, probably through voting, what are the 5 long-term goals that PEBB wants to focus on in the next 3 to 5 years. And so because we have this long horizon with these goals, they can be big. They can be big goals, things that we can accomplish through the renewal cycle. So just keep that in mind. We want to flip to the next slide. We have just a couple of assumptions we call out around goal setting, and the first of which is just around sort of emphasizing the value of doing this periodically. So having sessions like today, and I know the retreats are on an every other year cadence, but there certainly are other opportunities for the non-retreat years to still have these types of discussions. But from year to year, the composition of the board changes, the needs of the members change, your partners, your benefit partners sort of need to be aligned with what it is that the long-term goals are. Brian and Emery talked about all the sort of guardrails around the procurement process. So even if we move forward with an RFP, there still will be several years afterwards where accomplishing things will primarily be done through the annual renewal cycle. And so to the extent we can clearly articulate the goals, it's just going to help the carriers understand really what are the priorities. And then the last one is around the cost cap. All of these goals, all decisions really are counterweighted by this 3.4% cost cap. So enough said on that one. I know everyone heard of that requirement. So if we want to jump ahead, we've got a couple of slides here that largely are for you to refer to as we sort of have this discussion. So the first of which is the guiding principles. It's in a slightly different format, but nonetheless, this is the same principles that we've relied on for the past few years. And so we've gone ahead and highlighted PEBB's vision. This guiding principle framework is under the triple aim. So you can see the triple aim in the top there in that dark blue bar. And so if we want to flip to the next slide, we had discussion last time around the quadruple aim, the quintuple aim, and so we wanted to provide this as well. And all these lead up sort of reference slides that really just sort of get your creative and critical thinking juices flowing as we sort of talk about goals. And so just to orient you to this slide, when the triple aim changed to the quadruple aim, it was with the addition of improved staff experience. And so sort of a nod to the fact that the well-being of the providers who are actually providing the care, it matters. It has an impact on member health outcomes. It's important. And so the framework then was updated again to become a quintuple aim with equity there at the center. And so this is more sort of like equity by design. Some of the language we've been using today are centered on or centered in health equity. This is sort of a concept similar to what we talked about at the outset when we looked at those strategic pillars and the updates we made to the health infrastructure. This one we also threw in there again, just for your reference. This is just a different way to look at the strategic pillars. We've taken out a lot of the detail. So it's just sort of a different way to look at it and refer to as we're going through this exercise. And so we want to flip ahead. Instead of breaking you into these three groups, we are just going to do this all together. Once we land on our goals and sort of vote on them and prioritize them, they can be used for lots of reasons. They're going to help us with renewals from year to year, but articulating them helps the vendors understand where they need to be focused. Goals can be used for problem solving, for prioritizing strategies, for confirming those strategies still fit. And so hopefully these will be valuable. Once we complete the exercise, we'll have a list of really sort of high level, meaningful and impactful articulated goals based on PEBB's vision. I'm not going to read these questions on the reg. These are also just sort of prompts to get you thinking. And so instead of, as I said, instead of breaking you into groups and giving you 20 minutes, what we'll do is we'll just sort of open up the floor and have a discussion. Once we've captured all the suggestions around goals, we'll probably take a 5-minute break, if you're ready. And then that will allow us enough time to transpose the goals into a Slido format, so we can actually vote on them through the polling functionality and try to hone in on the top 5. And so with that said, I think we can open it up. I don't know if anyone has any thoughts on starting the discussion. Some of them could be, a little bit more bland, like hit the 3.4% cost cap. That's a good goal. It's not nuanced, but it is a reality. And so, that's important. So I guess I'll pause there. And if anyone else has any other comments more generally about goal setting and best way to go about it, please feel free. Otherwise, feel free to read through some prompts and we can sort of discuss from a long-term perspective what's important.
I mean, this was said at the very beginning, but I do think, previous boards, boards have prioritized continuing to have the rich benefits at a cost that PEBB members can afford. The low cost share has been part of that. Yeah.
Well, I'm from the east side. This is Greg. I'm from the east side. And one of the things we've always tried to maintain is that benefits on either side should be the same. One of the things that's been brought to our attention quite a bit is that the west side has Kaiser, which benefits costs are a lot less. And we have no option even to choose Kaiser if we decided to drive there.
The benefits equitable across the state.
Yeah, equitable across the state. And then with that, one of the things that we would hope that I have tried to push is with like the Providence plan, we have the Providence choice. Those medical homes are only in Oregon. So some of our, and not just corrections, but a lot of our individuals in the area that border Oregon, to be able to get some of those homes where individuals actually live on the other side of the state lines, we would pick up more individuals for that.
And I think these goals could, to a certain extent, could be a combination of things that are currently goals or sort of more aspirational things that maybe are nascent topics or things that we discussed here and there. But with this sort of brainstorming session, kind of anything goes.
Have we already asked their plans to reinforce their PCP networks and invest in them as a proportion of their overall spend? So as to sort of learn from our friends in other industrialized nations that have lower costs, higher quality of care, better outcomes because they have universal PCP primary care based systems, much less top heavy with specialty care. So that's a driver of quality and outcomes. And it's not how we run things.
We do have PCPCH requirements. Is Margaret on the line? She can talk more specifically as to what they are, but I didn't know.
Hi, Ollie. I am online. Yeah, I mean, I do know, for the PCPCH program, there are various tiers of recognition in terms of the specific practice features that the primary care providers have in place within their offices. And so there is a range in terms of, the highest tier recognition primary care homes and where they're offered. I think, we can certainly do some follow-up work with the Transformation Center PCPCH program leads and get some additional information if we want to take a closer look at kind of getting a more specific current status on what the lay of the land looks like in terms of the providers that have recognition, the level of recognition they have, where they're located. We have done that in the past and looked at that, but it's dynamic and it changes as more providers get recognition and all those sorts of things. So timing wise, it probably would be appropriate for us to take another look at that in more detail.
Isn't there also wasn't there some legislation that required us to spend a certain, like a specific 12%? Yeah, what's that? What is that? Can you remind us, like, what was that?
It's like the total expenditure. Is it 12? I think it's 12. Is it 12?
That's cool.
Okay.
Yeah, is that the 12% of total expenditures dedicated to primary care?
Yeah, we've met that every year.
Mhm.
Yeah,
But
We've also looked, I think, through the IWG, we looked at kind of the support that the plans provide to the primary care and the medical homes in terms of trying to supporting and other capitated payments and stuff like that. Years ago. MODA's total cost of care is tied to the primary care physicians. They're the ones who are incented to keep it at the 3.4%. So there is some definite support there. I think, and I can't remember the exact percentage of cost they're tied to that, but there's financial component as well to the primary care providers. But in terms of the amount of support that could be done, I'm sure more could be done and more else could be done on that to help support it. And in terms of also be more prescriptive about the providers and the support that there's the need. Like Greg's point, like maybe rural areas or the border areas where it maybe there's as much as many providers as could be for defense.
Just everything. Yeah, sorry, this is great. Yeah, just basically everything. Another thing I know we talked about, I don't know if it was last or time before, was a lot of our individuals are still stuck because we still have a lot of older individuals that are on the plan. They're still stuck on the days when everything was kind of free. And so you can, you see online or you see on TV nowadays, I get this medical plan for $299. And I think we need to educate. And I know we send out things people don't read, but we've got to try to figure out a way to educate people to understand that what we have is actually really good. And for the price that we pay as an individual to this plan. Now, the state pays more, I understand that, but what I pay as an individual to this plan and what I get with this plan is really good compared to a lot of plans. And you guys can say that. You look at a lot of plans. But me transferring that to Brian, who had to take his kid to the doctor, last week, $8,000, doesn't realize that my brother, who I talked to 2 weeks ago, has a $5,000 deductible. And he's got to meet 45% of that before he gets X amount off of, his medical. And he's paying $500 a month for his medical plan. And he is a manager at a Honda Corporation. I mean, that's the truth. I mean, that's not a lot, and so I try to explain that to individuals, but statewide, that's something I think if we could get, people would be more apt to use, understand more.
I think that's part of what our investment in employee orientations.
Yes.
In our partnerships, some other programs, trying to get to really help members understand and help retain them for employment as well. It's funny because, we participate in the web stakeholder group and even the web board members, and they get feedback and all half the time the comments are, we want same benefits that PEB has. And, yeah. So to respond to that, but
You've all done a great job.
Andy, go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to comment kind of what Greg said about educating people, where we have people on PEB who are, wow, this is, cost me $5 or $10, not realizing that with other plans, how much more people are paying. I do think it would be a good idea to maybe do some type of outreach with a comparison to other plans, maybe from other states, but to actually show them, like, here's the difference between them, and to help kind of illustrate that point. That's it. Thank you.
And Andy, just something for you to know that we want to think about doing something like Uplift on the university side too, because we know that university employees are not getting the same kind of information that state employees are now getting when they go through their employee orientations, because they're Uplift about how great their benefits are. So.
That's a whole interesting conversation that I'm happy to get into. I will say that I was curious that we do provide benefits for people out of state, because we were told that wasn't the case. So anyway, that's it. I think that's a great thing to follow up on.
Yeah, it wasn't that we don't do benefits for out of state. One of the things we're looking for is trying to get like our lower cost plan medical homes, trying to get some of those, some of our individuals have to drive quite a bit.
And one thing I just think, like, PEB holistically, like, has always looked at providing benefits for the health of people who work in the state, at the university system, and of, some of the local governments that are part of PEB too, but also for families. And I do think that's something, I would like to see PEB continue to do, because that has allowed the conversation around healthy workplaces. And I know we have a fragmented system, so whatever we can do in terms of our larger vision around keeping costs down and continuing to provide the kind of benefits that aren't just the medical benefits, but the benefits that impact the whole person and their families, right?
That first question about what does PEB do best? So I feel like it's like they're responsive, but what do other people? Because I'm the positive. Always everything's about the positive with me. So is there a different opinion about what does PEB do best? But I feel like that's it. Like, anytime I have reached into PEB and asked a question on behalf of a member, I feel like everybody's been very responsive. So I feel like that's something that we do well. We do, we don't ever, I don't feel like we ever, and again, please push back if you think I'm full of it. I don't think we ever belittle or give short time to someone who has public comment or somebody that brings something to our attention, even though sometimes it's painful, because sometimes it's true. And a system's broken and we have to address whatever they're telling us is broken. But am I correct in thinking that? I mean, that's kind of what I feel is something we do really well.
I mean, I don't hear of cases where members don't get the benefits, like they come into a system, they work at the same, they get their health benefits and there aren't gaps around that. So, I mean, when you talk like the delivery system, it's very strong in terms of people getting enrolled, getting their care.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I'm obviously biased, but, I mean, we try to be as responsive as possible, and I think we don't see a lot of complaints from members, as far as non-responsiveness or lag in responding. I think what we generally hear in some of the Sean or other board members is claims, issues or, how maybe a benefit, wasn't applied correctly. And those are obviously things that have caused the board to stop and consider and make changes over the years. And I think it's a board responsiveness as well as customer service and again, like Sean said, being member centered, benefit centered, equity centered. I think we don't field a lot of complaints. We have a customer service team that have been around and are experts in there's been no turnover. They really their daily goal is to support members as best they can, and I think that's resulted in public care.
Have we asked these questions to members?
Yeah, we have a member survey, an annual one, and it changes a little bit every year. Cindy actually administers it.
There are specific questions that remain the same for each survey, and those are customer service related. So how are we, as far as accuracy, responsiveness, knowledge, expertise, all of that? And those are asked each and every time. And we're about 90% of the people say we are good or excellent. Our target has always been 95%. We haven't gotten there yet, but maybe it's difficult. But there are a lot of other questions that shift from survey to survey. We do ask some carrier questions. We don't ask a lot of provider questions, but we are working with the Mercer Communications team this coming year to kind of develop a different survey to kind of get at some of the things that are not our customer service related. But we, out of our 50,000-ish people that we send it to, we get the last 2 years, we've gotten 11,000 to 12,000 people respond to that. So that's a good response rate for a survey.
Carriers also administer surveys, and we participated in the BC Burfus member survey for years. You're familiar with that, Don. It's a partnership with OHA. They don't do it anymore for public health, and Margaret's still on. She can help me with this, but yeah. But that used to inform us a lot of how members are doing.
Yeah, and just to chime in, Ollie, we are working on a state employee wellness survey that we will. The current plan is that we will be fielding that survey roughly about a year from now. So we're very early in the planning in terms of we still need to draft and finalize and construct a survey instrument and everything. But I think we can consider this. This question and this input as we're pulling that together. It won't be fielded to members for about another 12 to 14 months from now, but there's the potential to use that to capture some of this input from members.
Follow-up question was, are we getting the responses that we need or want?
If I may just follow up to what Margaret said about the employee survey.
Yeah, go ahead.
I would love for us to consider, if I know most of those are usually anonymous, which is fantastic and great. Could we and would we consider an option for folks to identify themselves if they would like to talk more about their responses, and that we or maybe the staff could follow up, because a lot of folks could also not be comfortable putting in their responses in a survey and would rather talk through it verbally. So I would love for us to consider having that option for folks to dive deeper into certain things that they may not be comfortable, because it's public records requestable and all that fun stuff. So I think if we can consider that, I would support that.
So I would have to look back at our last year's survey. I know that in the past, we have specifically asked people for their email address if they wanted us to respond to them based on information that they gave us. So I think we could word it a little differently maybe, and just have an open-ended, if you want to provide feedback to us. I don't know how we would figure out how to do that. I would give them Nathan's email address so they can. So in answer to the second, she just wanted to know if we're getting responses. We are getting responses. And so the part that we have not necessarily come back to the board, and well, it's been a while since honestly we presented the survey results to the board. You're a busy group, and so it's hard to get in there, but we also ask open-ended question at the end, and we do get a lot of responses to that, and it's been hard to analyze all of that, so there's a lot of information. But another thing that we're working with the Mercer Community this year is they have kind of taken a look and analyzed that information, and hopefully we will have an opportunity to present to you so you can see specific. Now, I want you to be aware that sometimes the people write something down are the people who are not happy. We've had some who have used inappropriate language. There's a whole bunch of, just aren't mean. But I think there's a lot of good information that we can get from it too. So I think this year, hopefully again, we'll find time that we can present that. But that might be better information than just a percentage.
I have a few items. So one, and I put this one first, symbolically, and also, I think it's sort of like the hub around which other things revolve. And that's the alternative payment model. I think that so long that we are stuck in a fee-for-service world, we cannot address equity. We can't address cost. We can't address when we're paying, we're getting what we're paying. And that is a fundamentally broken thing in our system, not just for pet, but just in general, that we pay for people treating these sick things. And so an alternative payment model, whether that's through an RFP or whether that's through legislation or whether that's through nudging, in our renewals or whatever, that's the key to long-term health, coordinated care, continued cost containment, equity approach, et cetera. That's my on that. I think that to this point about statewide, out of states, this has been an issue that's plagued us for some time. And we haven't really talked about this today, but the fact is one of the, I don't know, pillars of our current model is that we have a statewide plan. And theoretically, the statewide plan is not coordinated care. It's not supposed to be, like, we don't pay them to coordinate care. I mean, we kind of do, but that's not its thing. It's designed to be like, if you're not in the coordinated care thing, you're in statewide. And so we've been, over the years, we've been trying to nudge our members away from statewide on purpose. One, because it's the most expensive, and two, it has the least health outcomes. Because it's not coordinated. You're your own, choose your own adventure doctor, essentially, as the patient. But people still pick it. And one of the main reasons why they pick it is because at least it's the perception that that's their only option if they live perhaps in a rural area and they have doctors in Idaho or wherever, or they have they work for a university and they travel a lot, or they're on sabbatical, or they have children who are in college, who are in New York or whatever. They have to be on statewide for parents. And I think when you really think about, like, what is that? Do we have just like a thing where it's like you have yourself or someone else that's on, that you're taking care of, that's out of state a lot? What are you supposed to do? Like, is the best we can do? Maybe it is. It's just like some sort of catch-all contract as you go, you know, statewide thing. But do we need an entire system just to have that option, or is that a special thing that we have for like 1,000 members? I don't know. It's just a conversation. So just putting that on the table. But that's been something that we've chewed on for a while.
Cindy, did you want to respond?
Sean, one of the reasons that came up this year is our benefits staff is hearing from people who now, because of COVID and all of us working remote, actually live out of state full time. And so we keep being asked that question. And so it's more than just the people who are traveling, but really people who are living there and working there now.
Yeah.
So.
And that's part of the renewal letters,
Yeah.
building the foundation.
Great. It's a good conversation. It's been ongoing. But I think we need a plan around it, you know, so that like, we're kind of at the whim of other states. Even if we build something here, that's always the exception. We talked a little bit earlier about our system, and here I'm talking about PEBB in particular, although it applies to the rest of the state, I think, except for CCO maybe, that the default reality is that people slip through the cracks, but they just kind of do. And that's because the system's fragmented. And, you know, the dental plan isn't particularly needing to coordinate with the medical plan. The medical plan doesn't really think about behavioral health, and they contract with them, but it's a different thing. And then there's all these different options within the plan, and so you basically need to be like, you know, you kind of need like a master's or a PhD in healthcare to understand how to navigate healthcare, and that's just sort of the default. It's sort of like buyer beware kind of attitude that a lot of our healthcare is, rather than kind of a customer service orientated. Sometimes we use the verbiage in the industry is advocacy services, but that may not be the right word, but it's like that thing that has to do with if you need help, you just can't. Like once you're in the system somewhere, the system is just gonna get you to the right place. Almost despite yourself, you know, like you just can't accidentally end up in the wrong place. And that's where we wanna be, and right now, you really have to be your own advocate. And you really have to know what you're doing, and you have to be highly motivated to make it to the correct place, especially if you have complex medical needs. And some people rely on their primary care doctor to do all of that, and maybe that's the right model. But we've already talked about today how that's sort of unreasonable on the primary care doctor. You know, especially if you're a fee-for-service person, they get paid for 15-minute increments of work that they can bill related to a specific disease. So there's not going to be a code of like, oh, I spent 15 minutes navigating this person's doctor, you know, like no, it's like you either treated diabetes or you. And so there has to be some kind of something, whether it's a different, anyway, it's just a different model, thinking about getting people to the right place at the right time.
And Sean, I'm gonna let Chicky break in and then.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Chicky, go ahead.
This will most likely not be in direct correlation to what Sean was saying. So first off, I was going to say thank you for these brainstorming prompts. These are fantastic prompts. Secondly, please know I do not know. There's a lot of things I do not know. So like these questions prompt a lot of thinking in my brain, recognizing there's a lot of information I don't know. The one question that really draws my attention a lot is number 6. What single metric best defines PEB success? And boy, my brain went all different locations, whether it was legislative, whether it's budget, employee engagement, so on and so forth. And I landed on is a very idealistic thinking. PEB as a recruitment and retention lever for employees. We at the state, we as public employees, we know, I mean, we're talking about work as an indicator of health. We're worried about stress of our employees. But I also know a lot of people, there's been a lot of people who come to work for the state or for public employment, not because of the financial gain. They know they can get more in the private industry. But some of them come to work for public employment for Oregon because of PEB and OEB. So would love for us, I don't know how this could kind of frame future discussions, but as a recruitment incentive, especially for diverse employees. And I'm not just talking about people of color, I'm talking about lived experience, professional experience, all kinds of different diversity that we should be bringing to our workforce. And more importantly, to retaining our existing talent. We are going to be losing talent left and right, if we don't keep them incentivized to keep working for us. And if PEB is an incentive for them to stay, I would love to know that, because I think all our work kind of funnels into why we work for the state. And if there's an incentive of like, we love our benefits, fantastic. Let's measure that somehow, some way. So let me stop rambling there. I know that's really idealistic thinking, but kind of that's the only way I could wrap my thoughts around how can we package it together while also at the same time trying to help develop our workforce.
Capture that in that employee survey that was done. How important are benefits to you is the impact of.
And we absolutely hear it from our members, for sure. It is a top benefit. I mean, that people's benefits are why they stay and they prioritize it in bargaining.
We actually have the annual large group survey Mercer does as well, which puts that against other large public employers, private sector, and other local government entities, like 500 employees and above, and it always looks really good. You know, I don't know if a communication every once in a while out to members, you know, just kind of highlights that fact. Might be something that we consider. I don't know how that comes across, but it certainly would be something that we could highlight, not just to employees, but existing ones. So, head compares with private sector and other large organizations.
I've actually talked to the communication staff about that very thing and how we do need to kind of address. I've said it before, I'm always amazed at when PEB members say we need to have better benefits.
I know.
Jeez. So I think they just don't know. But
People don't understand.
yeah, it's true. And so I think that's great.
Along these lines, as somebody who works for the state and whose calendar is pretty dense and who has more on my plate than can get done on any given day, I know nobody else fights that same battle, especially if they work for the state. If I don't have my hand held and then dragged through the information in a required and protected format, I'm not gonna know until I need something. And then I'm already mad by the time I go read about it because I already needed it and I didn't get it in time. And so that's what made me go learn about it. And so I wonder, I saw and blocked on my schedule for the orientations and the financial advising and all the workshops and the seminars and all the stuff. And I made it to none of them because my plate is so full. And I'd like to know if there's a way to interact with our employer agencies, employers of, managers of PEB members to create a supportive environment in which that information could be spoon-fed to us members so that we can't avoid knowing it, because new employee orientation might happen pandemic style. But no matter what we get in that fire hose of information, we're gonna lose pieces of it. How can we, maybe on an annual basis, get a handheld tour of our benefits again, a reminder? How can we support that in a way that actually something comes off of people's plates when we put that on it?
Well, you make it mandatory in iLearn and it's you have to get it done for your annual in service.
Yes.
So that because you can't, and they fix iLearn now where you can't skip ahead. You have to actually, you can't turn away. You have to actually move this, or you have to interact and answer a question of something you just saw, or you have to type in a sentence that says you knew what you just heard. And if it's part of your mandatory iLearn, because we all give our staff time to get their iLearn done. It may not be as many hours, 40 hours of annual in service that we say we're giving them, because they get it done in a quicker amount of time in a year. But we can make it mandatory in your iLearn, so you got it, do not pass go. Otherwise, I mean, because the onboarding in person doesn't happen anymore. It's all through Workday, which, sorry, I'm using the wrong language. It's not iLearn anymore, it's Workday. Your training's on Workday, everything's Workday.
So SEIU does require new employees to go through the training that's called Uplift Your Benefits. And it is in Workday. So there is that. It is not necessarily an annual. I love that idea. If we have to get gas on board with that idea.
I've already wrote that proposal to DAS like 5 years ago, and they never, and came back 2 years later, responded, because I agree with you 100%. That would be, just make it mandatory like all the other trainings.
Yeah.
And, but you, the issue you raised is something that we struggled with for as long as I've been around is how do you get people to even open their emails and read, even if it's something very important, with a little exclamation mark on it. That's really.
And fundamentally, even around new employee orientation, we've got a fundamental problem in that most of the time you've already enrolled for your benefits before you've been through orientation. I've worked for 2 of our current carriers Providence is the only one that people start on Tuesdays. Your first day is full day orientation. They do a very good benefits presentation. That's when you learn before you have signed up for your benefits. Just after the fact, people read this. I think there's a lot of literature out there that says once somebody has a benefit plan, they want to renew as is, unless there's something causing them, they had a real bad incident, then they're going to want to change. Otherwise, I don't know anything about it. I'm just going to roll and keep the same thing because the prices are around the same. But if they make the wrong choice out of the gate.
I'm an advocate of putting it in offer letters, so I'm gonna send it out to people, and by the way, here's your, and you can go on here, you can take this class to learn about your benefits, you can call us, we'll help you walk through it.
Well, that's a great
And
idea.
do it, again, requires a system agreement, and I do it on my own, because I want it.
Help with attraction and retention, right? If they're considering an offer and then they see the benefits, that sort of maybe pushes them over.
And with some benefits, if you don't, for instance, your optional benefits, if you don't enroll when you first have a chance, and have no medical underwriting associated with it, if you try to enroll later, they're gonna put you through medical underwriting, and sometimes you're gonna qualify, and sometimes, I mean, there's a lot of reasons. I'm really passionate about it, so I'm glad you brought it up.
Can I speak to the piece, this is Sharna for folks on the phone, that Cheeky brought up about retention. And I hear a lot about offers and I hear a lot about new employee orientation, but as a 21-year employee, so much has changed over the years. And being able to discern out of the big pamphlet, the big fold-out pamphlet that comes every year, what is different this year can be a little overwhelming. And so I don't know if the idea of having something that's a yearly what's changed kind of thing might be helpful as well.
I was gonna say, I think we do that. don't
We do, it's at a really high level.
Okay.
It's
Yeah.
not,
Not highlighted.
it's, I mean, it's a what's new this year kind of thing, but it is very high level and not very detailed, and so.
But every agency's got a different culture, like we were talking about before, and some are really, really good and provide their own information and they're, have new employees, all the support that they need, and others are the opposite. And that's what having great partnerships with like Uplift Your Benefits is really helpful. And continue to get that message out in different ways. Resonates more now than it ever has.
How are we on time for this, please?
We're right on time.
There'll be maybe 5 more minutes. Do a 5-minute break. Go back and look.
Sean, I know Sean has
Sean,
more.
I interrupted
We
him.
did take a Post-it note off, so we answered some of his Post-it notes. I saw you moving them.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, basically, we have a lot of benefits, like special, features, if you will, and they're underutilized. They could be more heavily utilized. So it feels like part of that discussion about learning about your benefits. It's just like, and we have this perennial conversation, but it's like, how do you get everyone aware of all the things they actually have access to, which are enormous. And if there's something about that has to do with, basically, as far as I can tell, it's just like you have to have the governor on board that basically drops a hammer on gas. It's just like, you're doing this. Or we're going to find new leadership or something. But anyway, that was that point. The worksite wellness that we talked about, like the cultural change within agencies around wellness to get some of those things we were talking about earlier. Around the whole being, the whole person. I thinking about their community wellness feels like maybe at least at this moment, a bridge too far. You let me know if I disagree, but the culture of our agencies, on the other hand, feels at least theoretically possible. And I think as a goal, at least, having a goal of no agency left behind. That as Oregon, as a state, because we're fairly unique among states, that we have this 3.4% cap, we have to be better than any other state around worksite wellness. People should, our goal should be that other states are like, I wonder what Oregon's doing. Like that's a common question about worksite wellness. Because we have to meet this 3.4%, and when we fail, our benefits will be cut, and that's the end of that. So I just feel like as a goal on the board, so to speak, that just feels like something to strive for. And we already have some of that infrastructure built, but I just kind of want to renew it. Behavioral health integration. We've talked about that too, but it just isn't. And it's fragmented. And it's like a separate extra contract that feels like to me that most of our plans have. And it's like, well, you know, we contract with a whole bunch of things. Just like what's happening in those contracts and how are they connected to your patient-centered primary care homes or whatever system you've got for people not falling in the cracks. We need to understand how, we need to understand what we want to ask the plan and how we're going to hold them accountable for that integration. There's, I don't know, earlier today we were talking about, I feel like there's two, at least conceptually, there's sort of like two different types of members that we've got. And maybe they're kind of on an urban-rural divide, maybe not. Maybe it's more generational, but the point is, we have a lot of new technology in around like online, you know, doctors and you know, you just like call someone up and it's like whoever's online, you know, and you're just like, hey, there's this thing wrong, and they're like, okay, they deal with it right there. Some people love that, especially in the newer generation. They don't feel an attachment to a doctor. They just whatever, it's like whatever's fastest, easiest, most convenient, that's what wins, sort of the Zoom care model, if you will. You know, just like it's not important to them that they have a relationship. They're just like, it's an app almost. And then you have the other end of the spectrum where it's like all about the relationship. And somehow we have to meet both those needs. So we have to be sort of on the cutting edge of the technology side for those people, maybe the newer generation that are coming on. Maybe they embrace that more. Maybe that's the way they think about healthcare. And we have to be like ready to do that because it's cost saving. But on the other hand, we can't just like drop the other side of the sort of humanistic model, if you will, of healthcare. So that feels like a strategy that holds both of those things at the same time. We've talked about the centers of excellence, which is a cost-saving strategy that sort of holds between alternative payment models, like a whole new alternative payment model strategy versus status quo. It's kind of in the middle. And it's particular around specific procedures, needs, hip replacement, that sort of thing. But that's a thing that the innovation work group with OEB has spent a lot of time working on. So that's something to see through, at least to talk about. And then there's this whole thing about equity. And I was thinking, like, what does that mean? How do we translate it into a goal or a plan? And it feels like, at least for me, one of the things to really dig our teeth into there is to really consider how metrics, like how do we measure our plan's performance on doing whatever we need? And how do we hold them accountable for doing what we think we're asking them to do? And I think we have to get really clear about how we're measuring them on what they think they're doing based on what they think we want them to do. And that feels like a key component to get in place.
Your work, Sean, and the committee, are you interacting with OEI? Some of their work?
No, I don't think that committee So there's a behavioral health committee, there's the HPQMC. There's one metric that, that we came up with that is definitely not a silver bullet. And, it's basically, you know, did you offer translators when someone came in and they needed translation? It's like the lowest possible hurdle to get over. I mean, it set, like, the system just like, that just broke us, like, we just can't do it. So hard to measure. And, you know, they're crying when they come to, and they just can't, you know. And it is the most basic possible thing to have. So I think we have to think about things in contract that are just like, look, these are our basic things that we just have to do. And do them, and we're gonna look for some of our business. So I think it's on us to do that. I just don't see it. Just someone.
The way to broaden how that goal is described, something around the carrier commitment to health equity, and to sort of capture the metrics piece, to capture potentially accreditation or.
Yeah.
We don't need to fine tune the wording right now necessarily afterwards or that.
Yeah, the accreditation thing might be a great, you know, because we're not gonna have the equivalent for the Medicaid, you know? Like the Oregon standards are not encoded in such a way that it's like everyone has to do this. Maybe that's the way, because it's something. But from what I've observed in various other metric committees, the system is absolutely not going to make it. And they will like toddlers be on the floor kicking and screaming all the way, and we're just going to have to drag them to the door. That's my observation.
And I think the end game of that is accountability. Commitment is one thing, saying people for this, and but actually doing something that's measurable and meaningful, that's the hope and dale that we achieve, right? What metrics capture that?
Right. And getting clear on like what we really want, like what is success for us on that, and so that we can hold them accountable. I feel like it's just not going to happen from somewhere else.
Well, and some of those things like accreditation was raise the bar for their entire commercial population, their carriers who have.
Right. Yeah, there are probably other market forces that are working on them. We see it across the country, as opposed to all of our clients are asking for it. So there's definitely going to be market pressure as well. But the cynical side of me says, or the skeptical side of me says that, yeah, when carriers are forced to do something, they find a way to check the box. You know, or find the least they can do to say they're doing it. That falls short of accountability. That's the challenge, right? Because commitment or saying I'll do it, well, and this is what we're doing, even if they get the accreditation. You know, that's only a step along the way. It doesn't demonstrate that you're actually living it out. That takes a few years, retrospective analysis to see what you've accomplished.
Right.
So there's some leading indicators, probably intermediate and long-term metrics that probably need to wrap around all of this.
I don't know if the word metric is the right word, maybe, but it could just be like a contract, you know. Yes.
Could you say again briefly what you just said about what payers do when they're faced with a requirement?
Yeah. They find a way to do something that approximates what they're asking for. And they can say them and point to that and say, this is, I'll use wellness. Well, I hate to pick on this one, but I know. We generally speak, and I'm not talking about the incumbent carriers we have right now, just talk broadly about what I see across the country. If you look at what carriers are offering as their well-being support services compared to best-in-class vendors, specialty vendors in that space, there's a very large gap in the quality and outcomes and engagement levels that you see those two models. So what we've seen over the years is that the carriers will And we see this also with enhanced care, enhanced coordinated care. There are certain models out there that are brought to the carriers to deliver on by consulting firms and others, that they then will want to replicate themselves and put their own name on it to avoid the effort to do it well. So I hate to be too critical of the carrier world, but that tends to be what we see. They generally will find the least level of effort that they can do to preserve profit margins and whatever.
Say we're, all of us are, I mean, who we are, we're looking to make taxpayer employees that pay their insurance, make those dollars, and to take on something that may cost an additional X amount of minutes to do, and then turn around and we're only asking for 3.4%. You know.
Oh, we had
Kind of work.
a lot of kicking and screaming this year on our initial triple net figure fees and that, so yeah, it's exactly right.
I have a stupid question. Payers feel like a middleman. A middle person. Who are taking a cut to do a thing. Why do we need payers to do a thing?
That'd be a big RFP.
Yeah.
Also provider contract.
Yeah,
That's
so
the-
provider,
So that's the, I think that's where,
yeah,
but-
that's part of it. I mean, I think the state of Washington used to do their own provider contracts. Actually, a study to see what would happen if they try to go back to that. But yeah, they did have their own staff that basically said, did accreditation, stuff like that. They had a TPA that was paying the claims. And in some ways they set their own rates. It's like, look, this is how much we're paying for care. We're going to do that here for hospitals and stuff like that. And so it's like kind of a something or not. Kind of, and if you're credit, you have your license. It does take an effort. I mean, it's like you can go to the director, you need your own staffing. There's much more staff that's involved in it. You're running this whole health plan, essentially. And getting some help for it too. It's actually something that we kind of proposed a little bit. I mean, the Lodestar plan, I mean, where we kind of like you set your own rates, you kind of like get TP to administer that, and you have to have a TP vendor to essentially run your numbers through that vendor to some big guarantees and stuff like that. But it is a major effort. I mean, the amount of staff and what you want. I mean, it is. I mean, if you want to go down that line, I mean, we could definitely talk to you about doing it, but
Yeah, it's an option to look at. It's part of that model and we stopped doing that. Seems like within a region, it would be a much easier, more possibility than statewide kind of venture. Like, just the number of staff to go to legislature for.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean,
Expertise.
I mean, it would be moving money, right? We're paying them to do a thing and we would be not paying them and we would have that money to do a different thing in a different way. And it wouldn't have to go through this other partner that needs to make their cut in order to make it worth their while. And we would have to perform those functions. But it would begin to take on some of the characteristics of a much broader and more outcomes focused plan and service delivery and so on. And it sounds like you've already been down this path and we
Not
don't have
really.
to.
That's something that we can research, like for other states or the other states doing.
I know when I worked for the county of Los Angeles, we could get care within the system was really easy to access. And it seems like there's a whole bunch of efficiency in systems like that, but I recognize that there are many, many layers of complexity enabled here. Take more time.
do we want to pause and do a break and come back and vote on some goals? I don't want to cut it short. I know we're running up against 9 minutes till 2, but if anyone else has sort of a burning idea that they're passionate about, please. Breathe.
Take a break.
All right. 5-minute break?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. He's calling you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Chips.
Well, I mean, we could.
Oh, thanks. I wish the prescription was right.
It's a lot of multiple choices. It's multiple.
All right,
It's like multiple 5,000. It's like 5,000 questions.
We're coming back. And we're requesting that we get an additional 5 minutes of every time, so that will go to 2:05. That works for everybody. So we're just gonna go with that.
All right, so we have done our best to capture these, sort of word them in a concise way. And so, I think we're choosing up to 5, right?
That's what it looks like.
Okay.
She's fine.
So take your time, you know, there's quite a few in there, so just take your time and go over.
It's just people, members, voting.
We can go to slider.com and then put in that number.
Very important, but I'll leave
What
for
is
that.
it?
It went- Just a bit of delay.
If you just go to the slider.com, you can just put in the 9348495.
My computer lost its connection.
Here,
It's
that's on the last,
using,
that's on
so.
the last page of the,
Oh, okay.
We're allowed to choose 5, right?
Yes, I realize she's fine. Up to 5, I guess up to 5.
You should try to put more, see what happens.
I tried that, and it gives you a warning, it's like, please choose less. Okay.
Because we know you have more than 5 shows.
Because somebody on this team that's on may have to be the spokesperson to, well, we'll see. Hold on. Yes, this computer's not on.
We'll make Ollie your proxy.
Sure.
Well, I'm just trying to, Savon's using mine because her computer died. So we lost our connection, so we're trying.
Can the polls be sent to those, like, I think Cheeky just had to drop off, can the polls be sent out to those who missed after that? Or will it, are they gonna inform stuff?
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Find a way to combine our responses.
This is gonna be like a Georgia or something.
Right choice.
Or it is very choice.
Well, mine was ahead, and then it wasn't. It was clearly cheating.
Yeah, we're cutting it off now. I want you to know.
Maggie's back there, she's manipulating.
I have declared victory on this.
By the way, thank you.
It turns out. Okay.
Talking to fit my Twitter binder well.
It's a coffee table book, full coffee table.
There's no fish. There's no
You
fish
can
pictures.
We'll add some fish pictures.
It's nice to meet you in person. I keep seeing just this one.
Just seeing, yeah, like a little box.
I thought about today.
Everybody?
That's it.
All right, we can wrap us up.
All right, and so, what we can do is sort of make this, take this back and sort of summarize it, make it a little bit more coherent, and maybe share it back with you in the January board meeting, if that makes sense. And we can sort of continue this discussion for sure. Because as we sort of said, this really is an iterative process, but All right, accountability and health equity coming in at number one. Yeah, preserving the richness of the benefit, and then it looks like a number of them at the 50% mark. So I think, we don't necessarily have to list the top 5 when we summarize this back for you. We'll think of a way to sort of list them based on these results here. But, yeah, hopefully this was a helpful exercise, and I think once we sort of follow up with you, you'll have something that's in a little bit more of a digestible format than seeing these with percentages. Certainly can have another session like this as well. So it might be really used all the time, which is awesome. So that kind of brings us to the end. We've got another polling question if folks are up for it around how well the retreat went and the direction of the board, how we sort of landed on goals. So if folks like to slide it out, maybe we can do that real quick. You have to jet, no problem at all.
And I just want to say I really appreciate everyone giving their time today, because it was 2 much longer meetings than usual. So really appreciate folks engaging and coming. And I do think we need to officially ask if there's any public comment. Rose, is there any public comment?
No, I don't have any public comment.
Okay, good, thank you. So after people do the last poll on how the retreat went, I will go ahead and officially adjourn. So, thank you, everyone.
We'll get Chicky's votes as well in there. So if you see the results change, you don't need to call shenanigans. We're just gonna.
We're all gonna lobby her about what we do.
Gonna combine some of those so that we wind up with 5.
I think that's.
So your last question,
Yes.
I can only type in, I think the board is heading, and it won't let me type anymore.
Yeah, it's a little spot.
Gotta be a short answer.
Oh, so you have limited characters.
Okay, I just wondered, is that correct? It's gotta be a phrase. Okay.
I just put a 1 word.
I was gonna
Accepted.
give it back.
I know exactly right. Thank you for lunch. It was wonderful. I appreciate the healthy choices. Yeah.
Try to get teams that
And if somebody thinks that wasn't healthy, in my opinion, that was healthy choices, so.
take a bowl for the road if they have to figure out.
All right, so I think, since we're officially adjourned, we'll sign off. I'll let Kimberly.
Bye.
Thank you. I actually thought about bringing I'm usually not away for so long. I didn't realize my computer would die.
I keep mine on a docking station at the house, and it's always so funny how like when I take it back now, I'm gonna have days of trouble because I moved it. It gets so upset when